So, are you DTFF?
Again, here's Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your host, Jake Trowbridge and Dustin Lunt.
Welcome back to DTFF, everybody. Happy Tuesday evening. We are back. Great show this evening, talking all things NFC South, what everyone considers the most exciting division in football. I'm sure there's some people that say that, not a lot, but you know, we'll pretend for tonight.
Sure.
But before we get into all that goodness, gotta say hi to my co-host Jake. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Hello. Doing swell. I'm doing swell. We're fighting off storms here. We're literally fist fighting thunder and lightning right before we hop on the show. That's how professional we are. Not going to let that stop us from doing this. No, I'm doing good. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, no complaints. I'm excited to chop this division up here. I think it's very underrated. I think there can be some fantasy gold to be had here if you look hard enough. So yeah, I can't wait to chop it up and talk about it. But before we do any of that, we've got our what are we drinking this week? I brought you this beer, and I bought it. I mean, I love Youngblood Brewing, brewery we featured many times on this podcast, local in Madison. But I bought it strictly because of the name. I'm not gonna lie. It's called Human Chumbawamba Song. It's a nice, beautiful can here. And Jake, do you know why it's called the Human Chumbawamba Song?
Is it? Wait, it's the whiskey drink, lager drink, cider drink bit. Is that it?
Yeah, it's a lager drink. It's a pilsner. Yeah, it's a pilsner. It's a lager drink. Yeah,
it's funny because it's educational and true at the same time. This is an unfiltered pilsner, which you're more of the expert, obviously, on this stuff than I am with the brewing. So traditionally, when you make a lager or pilsner or whatever, what's the filtering process? What the fuck are they trying to get out or not get out in this case?
Well, basically, it's the yeast. You want to let the yeast drop out of suspension, so you get like this nice crystal clear beer that you can basically read a newspaper through. That's what you want to go for. That's your typical lagers, like your Bud Lights, and any of those light lagers. They're really like crystal clear. So they just didn't filter out all the yeast, which is just non-traditional when it comes to lagers.
Okay, so it's a non-traditional lager, but also a non-traditional. I love this brewery, like you said. I don't know if they do this for every beer, but did you notice the little story that they put on the can?
Oh, I did. Yeah,
as well.
There's always some sort of little story. No,
I just want to read the couple of blurbs because it's so fucking good. So it says, in the romantic comedy Captain America: The First Avenger, Old Cap, as he is affectionately called, comes across a really bad dude with a red face. Well, Mr. Redface was pretty aggressive and started fighting with Cap. In fact, lots of people wanted to fight Cap, and he got hit a lot. But he always got back up again. His response was unfiltered, like this Pilsner, for a clear statement of refreshment that will take you into the hop field of galaxy. Come on, young blood. You're getting crazy. But I love how it ends. It says, this beer will have you saying, I can do this all day. And I fucking love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read that. And I got a real kick out of that. I know they do have some little blurb on every one of their cans. This is probably the most descriptive one I've ever seen. And I love every second of it.
It's incredible. I love it. Welcome in Albert, by the way, into the chat.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
Everybody hop into the chat as you have time. Hello. Ask questions as we're going through tonight. That's what we're here for, right?
Smurfly. Okay, Jake.
We don't have a drunk trade. This week.
I was just going to
sorry. No.
Come on, folks.
No, we don't.
Give us drunk trades.
Yeah, submit your drunk trades.
Also, I don't know if we have to go back to Reddit.
Don't force me. Well, you know what? Here, let me do this. We'll make it a short and sweet one. A very short and sweet one.
Okay.
For my own league. for my own league. This trade went down. I've already broached you about it, but I want to talk about it on air. So this trade happened in my league. I wouldn't say I was drunk doing this. This was like late afternoon. I wasn't actually, it wasn't even late afternoon. It was early afternoon. I wasn't drunk, but let's pretend for a second that I was. In my favorite dynasty league, 12-teamer, super flex, tight end premium. This is the trade that went down. I sent away Trevor Lawrence. I receive Puka Nacua, Sam Howell, and a 4th-round pick. Dustin, I was just feeling the good vibes from our most recent episode talking about the Rams. I wanted a share of Puka. I'm rebuilding. I don't want points in my lineup. This officially gives me no starting quarterbacks in that league. So even though I have Puka, who should be amazing, it will help me hopefully lock up the 101 for the year after that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one?
I like this trade for you. I think the key that you said was you're rebuilding. So yeah, you got rid of a starting quarterback. And as I said, I think in our chat was Trevor Lawrence, solid number 2. Like he's never, I don't think ever going to be an elite quarterback. Maybe he'll be, I see him having that Kirk Cousins type trajectory where he'll be like low end QB1, like QB 12-ish, 13, maybe bump up to like QB 10, 9 if the cards play right. Like I just don't ever see him jumping up even into that Joe Burrow at like 6 or 7. Like I just don't see that ceiling for him. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just he hasn't had the weapons. But to be honest, if he couldn't do it last year with Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk at the helm, it kind of makes me wonder if it'll ever happen. And it's not like they got better wide receivers on their team this year. I know there's a lot of hope for Brian Thomas, but until I see, I just don't know, So I think considering you're a rebuilding squad, I love it. You get a young core wide receiver, just coming off a sensational rookie season. Yeah, you get Sam Howell in return, a quarterback, which if he ends up playing for some reason, you can always flip him for draft picks too. And I just see it as a win all around for you. I love this. I love this trade.
Thanks, man. I feel happy about this one too. And you're right about Sam Howell. There's a decent chance. We didn't really talk about this, but we kind of talked about it when we brought up the Seahawks last week. I don't think the Seahawks are especially committed to Geno Smith. So I see a world where if stuff doesn't go right in the first season under a new head coach and coaching system, maybe they give old Sammy Biscuits a shot here. So I'm into that too.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, Jake. I like talking trades, and I've missed our drunk trade segment over the last few weeks, so it's nice just to get us a little guy in there. So all right, let's move on. Yeah, a little nipper. Let's move on here. Talk about the NFC South. Do you have a preference on which team we start, or you just want to follow the show sheet and just go right on down?
I'll give them a peek behind the curtain. I do not want to end on the Panthers. They're not listed that way. So I'm fine to go in succession as long as we don't end on the Panthers.
All right, that's fine. Well, we'll go in order then and not end with the Panthers. So we'll start with the Buccaneers. Notable losses. David Moore, I guess, was notable. Didn't really bring anybody on board via free agency that's fantasy relevant to talk about. And then in the draft, in the 3rd round, took wide receiver Jalen McMillan. In the 4th, running back Bucky Irving. And in the 7th, tight end Devin Culp. So, Jake, why don't you start us off here? Give me your thoughts about the Bucs and just kind of an overview of what your expectations are for this team fantasy-wise.
What I like about the Bucs offseason is they did their best to make it easy on us. So comparable to what the Lions did or didn't do, I would say that the Bucs are basically secondary in that idea of you should never do this, but if you're going to copy and paste stats from one year to the next, it's largely because there hasn't been any major changes either with, coaching staffs, although in this case it's slightly different, or just personnel. So personnel, it's nice and tight still. We know what the pecking order of this team looked like last year. Sure, there was a couple of guys added in the draft that we will talk about here, at least one of them. But I think in general, the Bucs give us this very clear outlook, which is rare in fantasy when things are just getting more and more murky and so many trades happen in all this. So for the Bucs, again, I do not copy and paste stats or finishes from the previous year, but I'm basically, it's so much easier to gauge them. I'm not fretting about these guys. So I like the cleanliness of this. But I do want to start where you had listed this question, because talking about really the only new blood that I think is interesting for this team that came from the draft was in the backfield. So you had asked, can Rachaad White repeat his performance from last year, and I guess the year prior to some extent, or is Bucky Irving a concern? I think we had kind of a similar conversation about Kyron Williams with the Rams and the backfield addition over there. I don't think Bucky Irving is on as many people's radars to be a threat. So I've seen people still hype up Rachaad White a whole lot. Dustin, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that Rachaad White can repeat, because I don't think he's a very good running back. I'm sorry, I know that sounds rude, but in comparison to the other guys in the league, of course, he's in the NFL, so he is good to some extent, but he's not nearly as good. He's not an elite level talent. And I really like Bucky Irving. What do you think about Rachaad White? Do you have those expectations for him?
I think he can repeat. I mean, we saw what he did last year. Bucky Irving, they needed somebody else in that backfield to be able to spell him a little bit. Like there are no more, with the exception of maybe CMC, there are no more bell cow running backs really in the league. So they need someone to be able to spell White. And I think that's all this is. Could he eat into some of that workload? Maybe, but I don't see any reason why he would. I mean, White, he's going to catch balls out of the backfield. I'm not really concerned. I think just based on what the Buccaneers did this offseason, tells me they're happy. If they really wanted to spend more draft capital on a running back, if they thought that he wasn't the guy, they would have. I mean, they spent a 4th round pick. It's not like they spent a 2nd round pick on a running back. Like guys on day 2, day 3, they just typically don't hit at a high rate. So yeah, it's a good story. He'll get some play. I just don't see this being a major impact for White's production for next year.
I want to call out from the chat here. Gator J, welcome in, Gator J, saying Bucky is going in the 15th round while White is going in the 7th in best ball right now. So a major discrepancy there. So obviously most people, I think, are looking at it from your vantage point. Although White in the 7th does feel like a slide, definitely from where he was last season, or where his last season finish was, rather. I'm not so sold on Rachaad White. Again, I don't think he's very good. And I think Bucky Irving, only from the things that I've read, because we'll say over and over again, we're not rookie experts. We're not college film studiers here. But everything that I've read about Bucky Irving is the one thing that he excels at. Well, 2 things. Pass catching, because he actually ran real routes in college. Like he was in the slot. He was out wide even a little bit here and there. But also like just burst. That's the thing. Rachaad White is like such a plotter. It's like the Bucs were like, hey, can we get Leonard Fournette, but 4 years younger? And then they brought on Rachaad White. I don't know. I'm not going to draft Bucky Irving much. I did take him in a couple of rookie drafts for Dynasty just because it was the 4th round, and why the fuck not? But I won't be drafting. I don't think I'll be drafting either in redraft. But God, if White's there in the 7th, maybe he is actually a value. Good call out by Gator J. By the way, the upgrade on the offensive line will help.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of best ball drafts, but the ones that I've seen them going more like in the 4th round, 5th round, as opposed to the 7th. But it could be a different platform. You know, every platform has different ADP and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, in the 7th, I would be smashing that all day. I think that's a steal at that point.
Yeah, it's the red running back dead zone at that point. And can you pinpoint anybody out of that group that's going to be better than Rachaad White? Maybe.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a couple of names. I think he is probably actually worth it at that cost. In redraft, I think by the time we get there, his price will be higher. So I would be out. But yeah, if I'm looking at the 7th round, I'd be okay with that. But
Mhm.
more to your point, or my point, both of our points, Bucky Irving, I think the one thing he does well, being the pass catcher, is like, all right, is he good enough that he's going to eat into this offensive target share at all? And I guess, will he actually eat into the targets for the wide receivers? So that's question number one. And then question number two is, can this offense support 2 really high-end wide receivers, like top 12 guys? I would even put the line at top 20. Can we look at 2 top 20 receivers on this team, Dustin? Do you think that's possible?
Top 20, yes. And I would beer bet you on that one. If you're not confident on it, I would take that action. But I put top 12 because we've seen Mike Evans do it before, and Chris Godwin has been up there. But with Baker at the helm and the style of this offense, I personally don't see it. Is there a world where it could happen? Absolutely. I think the chances are so slim. I think it's going to be probably Mike Evans at the low end of a wide receiver 1, and then Chris Godwin is maybe like a low end wide receiver 2.
I think I can do this one. I think I will do the beer bet for this one, because my philosophy on this, and it's not a great line. I don't feel super confident, but I feel confident enough to make this bet, because when we talk about some of the other guys, and we'll get to like the tight end situation, it's not great. There is a consolidation here on this team. And I feel like, yeah, Mike Evans is the one who will finish as a top 12 guy. I don't think Chris Godwin will, but I could see him inching into, if not top 20, top 24. But I will make the beer bet here for top 20 for the 2 of them in points per game.
Yes. Lock it down. I love it. Oh, God, I love this one. I just feel like that's money in the bank for me.
I'm writing it in.
You should just take the shot right now, Jake. Jake, did I lose you? Did you lose me? Uh-oh. Are you back? Jake, can you hear me? Well, I think I lost Jake. Yep. All right. Well, I'll keep talking here. As I said, I don't feel like this team can support 2 top-end wide receivers. More likely, Mike Evans will be a low-end wide receiver 1 in my book, or maybe just slightly outside the wide receiver 1. But I feel like it's his year. Baker loves to throw the ball up. He's a big body guy. Chris Godwin just hasn't lived up to those expectations like we had hoped years ago. A very solid wide receiver, but hopefully this is the year things can get turned around. Outside of those 2, I don't see much as well as far as fantasy relevance. But we'll move on to the final question here is with Cade Otton. And is he a viable late round option? I think he can be if you're really punting the position super late. Note in the show sheet says he had only 2 double-digit fantasy performances last year and 6 his entire career. Are Are you back?
Apparently,
Jacob, are you there?
Allowed me back in.
Uh-oh. Lost them again. Anyway, K. Dotton, I suppose you could throw a late round dart at him if you wanted to have him at the end of your drafts for some reason. I'm not super high on him. And I think he's going like tight end, like 18 to 20 in best balls right now, which isn't really exciting. I don't see a ton of upside with him, especially with the two wide receivers. And then you got White, you got Bucky Irving. And this isn't the most prolific offense, most high powered. So I just don't see a world where K. Dotton, can be a week to week tight end for you. I think best ball, if you're punting the position and you want to get him super late, that's fine. And just pair him with some other guys, and he'll maybe have that week where he gets a touchdown or two and catches like 4 balls for like 80 yards. But outside of that, I just don't see him being a consistent tight end for you week to week. So we'll move on here. I'm actually going to move on to the Panthers here, since Jake didn't want to talk about them all that much and was not very excited. I'll move on to the Panthers here, since since there probably isn't a ton to talk about here, but we'll start with the Panthers here, and let's start with the quarterback position here. And Bryce Young, rookie season last year, didn't look overly impressive as far as quarterbacks go. Didn't have a whole lot going on as far as his rookie season. Yeah, the whole team is kind of a dumpster fire, and they traded away DJ Moore to get him. They didn't have any great wide receivers on their team. No offense to Adam Thielen, of course, but he's not the same guy that he was when he was in Minnesota, kind of at the tail end of his career. And we saw him drop off as the season went on. So do I think he takes a step forward this year? Yes. I think the Panthers have made enough moves, bringing in Deontay Johnson. They drafted Jonathan Brooks, which is a little surprising that they didn't try to address the wide receiver position a little bit more. I know they took Jonathan Mingo last year, and they drafted another receiver in Xavier Legette in the first round. So, they tried to bolster the position, but I'm just not sold on Legette, I guess. But I do think he takes a step forward. But as far as owning him or rostering him, I should say, in redraft this year, I have no desire. I think he's going to be way far down in your drafts, and there's no reason to take him. Hey, Jake, are you back?
Oh, hello. I think I'm back.
Nice. All right. So, Jake, I was just I decided, since you weren't on here and you didn't want to talk about the Panthers too much, that I'd skip the Falcons and talk about the Panthers for a bit. So, so do you think, do you have any interest in Bryce Young this year for redraft?
For this year, I can't get on board. I just refuse. My issue with Bryce Young is, one, David Tepper and the ownership of that team. I feel like I've meddled so much to that young man's detriment that it's not gonna work out for him. I'm fearful that we start to see like a severe drop off, almost like a Mac Jones kind of thing, where it's like a couple games at a time we can get on board with Mac Jones. But I love Deontay Johnson and the addition that they added there, but I don't think he's enough to suddenly change Bryce Young. So a step forward, yes. But like making him worthwhile in redraft, no.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page there. I like kind of what they're building around him, but I just don't think this is the year. And I don't see him taking that giant step forward where he'll actually be viable for redraft. So, speaking of Deontay Johnson, do you consider him of value in drafts right now? Currently, let's see if I can't pull up where he is currently going in drafts. If I was a better host, I would have had this all at the ready. But, Deontay Johnson's a guy that I love. I traded for him a bunch last offseason and then kind of poo-pooed out on that Pittsburgh offense. So right now he's going as wide receiver 42 and 72nd overall. To me, that is criminal. And I will eat up that value all fucking day long and laugh my way to a championship because he's going to get peppered with targets.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he did in Pittsburgh in a low volume offense. And now he's moving to a spot where he is like the only guy, basically. I just love it. Just give me Deontay Johnson all day long. What do you think?
Yeah, we saw Adam Thielen, 32-year-old Adam Thielen last year, through the first 5 or 6 weeks, look like an absolute league winner, and then his body and age caught up with him, and unfortunately he dropped off, but I don't even think that was a product of the offense. That's just a product of dude's fucking old. Deontay Johnson at this point should basically take over that role for Adam Thielen, but hopefully stretch it out through the entire season. So, look, I don't know that I'm going to say he'll be a top 12 guy, but he will have top 12 weeks for sure.
No. I'm not projecting him to be a top 12 wide receiver by any stretch of the imagination. I think he can be a solid number 2 for your team. I think he'll be a solid wide receiver 2 with, like you said, upside. He'll have those spike weeks, I think, where he will crack into the top 12. But I don't see him finishing as a top 12 wide receiver. But, I mean, where he's going in drafts right now, you'll be able to get him. I mean, he's not even a wide receiver 3, being drafted as a wide receiver 3. Like, that is criminal. It's just pure upside. It's ridiculous, and I don't understand the hate that he's gotten. I mean, I just don't get it.
To answer your question, he's not a value. He's the best value in drafts right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. Joey joining us in the chat. Speaking of top 12 guys, hi Dustin and Jake. Well, hey Joey, thanks for joining us. That's very kind of you to say.
And the top 46 guy in the chat too. That's incredible, Joey.
Oh, that's mean.
I'm just kidding. Love you, Joey.
All right, so let's finish up this Panthers conversation. Jake, talk to me about Jonathan Brooks. Is he one of those mid-round dead zone running backs that you can target this year that will pay off by the end of the season?
I think so. We're talking about just like a dearth of options on Carolina in general. So Deontay's the guy at wide receiver. Jonathan Brooks is the guy at running back whenever he is fully up and running with them. The injury late last season, that's just the question is, does he start week 1 or do they hold him out for a couple of weeks? I've mentioned this before, but it's probably like the Todd Gurley situation when he came into the league. He suffered almost the exact same injury around the exact same time frame. They held him out for, I think, 2 games, and then he hit the ground running and was good to go. So as soon as they say he's leading the backfield, he's in my lineups because I think the volume alone will be incredible for him. I'm not saying he'll be reproducing Todd Gurley numbers from his rookie season, but yeah, I think he's probably one of the best mid-round running backs to target just because of what I expect his volume to be.
Yeah. Hey, Jamie, joining us in the chat. And he says, we're drinking and talking fantasy football. Let me go crack a beer. Love it.
Oh, yeah.
Come join us. Yeah, I think Jonathan Brooks right now, he's going ADP of running back 26. I do expect that to climb by the time redraft season comes along, especially if he is ready to go come training camp. And, we start getting the hype videos of him, looking good in pads and breaking off some runs. And, if he does anything in the preseason, I think he might get pushed up a little too far, but where he's being drafted right now, I think he's a great target if you go wide receiver heavy for the first few rounds and then start to tackle that running back position. I think where we stand right now, that'd be a great move, and he's a guy I'd be looking at targeting for sure.
Heck yes. Well, let me ask you this. Jonathan Brooks or James Conner? He's going to be our dividing line on most running backs.
I will probably say Jonathan Brooks, and ironically, James Conner is one spot after him in ADP. But I will probably say Jonathan Brooks. I think he has more upside. And that's nothing against, Chuba Hubbard or, any of the other running backs on the squad.
Mm-hmm.
I just see him having more upside than what James Conner has. And so give me the upside in that position rather than the safer floor of maybe of a James Conner.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. More worried about Trey Benson than I am Chuba Hubbard for backups.
Correct. Yeah. All right. Well, that should wrap up our Carolina discussion for this evening. So let's move on to the Falcons, Jake. I didn't want you to miss this with all this possible fantasy goodness here. In the offseason, they lost Desmond Ridder, Mac Hollins, Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, Cordarrelle Patterson, McCole Pruitt, Jonnu Smith, just a who's who of notable losses. And they brought on board Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, and Rondale Moore. And in the draft, first round, Michael Penix Jr. In the 6th, running back Jason McClellan, and wide receiver in the same round of Casey Washington. So I have to say, I do like where this offense is going, with possibly Kirk Cousins being at full health come the start of the season. New coaching staff, got rid of Arthur Smith finally, who hates fantasy football apparently. So I think everybody has higher expectations for this team. But Jake, how high are you on these multiple fantasy options of Bijan and Pitts, Drake London, Rondale Moore, Kirk Cousins? Are we expecting fantasy gold this year?
Yes, we have to.
Perfect.
It's a conflation of a lot of things going into this. It's not just that they finally have a competent quarterback. It's not just that Arthur Smith is gone, but it's all of that merging together for this beautiful thing that we haven't got to see yet with this group. With everybody down the line, you saw their worst case scenario play out the last 2 years, obviously outside of Kirk Cousins. As long as Kirk Cousins is the guy and active on week 1, again, talking about injuries, his timeline, hopefully he's okay to go week 1. And I'm not worried about his injury for his performance level because he has zero scoot. He is not a scooter. He does not run. He is just a pocket guy. We don't have to worry about that with him. But yeah, he rises all tides. Bijan Robinson, I know this is a guy everybody wants to talk. Well, everybody wants to talk about all of these guys, but Bijan Robinson especially, I think is notable, right? So Bijan came into the league last year, and I think I noted this on the sheet. He was going 8th overall in drafts, in redraft, by the time it was August. And he was the RB3. And now it feels like people are worried about Bijan. But it's like, you can't do that. You have to almost write off last year because of the quarterback situation, because of Arthur Smith, and basically just pretend that this is his rookie season. So I don't know, Dustin. When you look at it, yeah.
I say, what if I told you right now he's currently being ADP of running back 3 and 8th overall?
Oh, no shit? Okay. All right. Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Not to poke that hole, but I think
God.
No, but I think the bigger question is, do you think he can be the RB1 overall? Will this offense have enough juice? And do you see like Christian McCaffrey taking a step back maybe with, his age on him and the kind of wear and tear he's had, and, Saquon's on a different team, and, Breece Hall, we don't know what this Jets offense is going to do. So I think it's within the realm of possibilities, but is it something that could, realistically happen?
Yeah, I think it's probable. Like, not just possible. I think it's probable that Bijan Robinson finishes as the overall number 1 because of volume and because of touchdown upside, CMC is still going to be CMC. Maybe his new contract will weigh him down. Maybe he'll be bloated from that 2-year extension he just signed. I think that there is realistically 5 people who could finish as the RB1 this year. CMC, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, I still think has that range of outcomes with him. Breece Hall, and my guy Derrick Henry. So I think any of those 5 could legitimately finish as the RB1. And Bijan, yeah, man, I will be drafting him assuming that.
All right. So we got a couple questions in the chat here. So we're going to go back from Jamie here. If Roschon Johnson was drafted to the Panthers, would you rank him higher than Brooks?
No.
What do you say?
I love Jonathan Brooks out of this rookie class. Again, listening to people who are way smarter than I am about rookies, he was heads and tails even above the rest of the group. Some people like Trey Benson, but yeah, he was a standout.
Yeah, same here. And then Jamie asking a question here. Also, if Cousins can't start week 1 and Penix blows up in the first few weeks, do they sit Penix and still go with Cousins, or does Cousins become a high paid backup? I mean, I think that, they drafted Penix obviously for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, if he plays well and Cousins isn't ready to start the beginning of the season because he's still recovering, yeah, why wouldn't they stay with the rookie that they drafted to be their guy of the future and let them work with all the other young players they have on their roster and build that chemistry? We've seen other guys, Matt Flynn, get paid big money and then sit on the bench and make all this money and be a backup. So it's happened in the past. You're going to go with the guy that gives you the best chance to win. And I think the Falcons are in a position right now with this offense, especially that they can make some noise in the NFC this year. So yeah, I don't see that being out of the realm of possibilities at all.
I firmly agree with you. I love what you said about, like, if he's performing well, why would you take him out if he's your future? The last thing you want to do is wreck a young quarterback's confidence by being like, oh, yeah, you've been crushing it these 4 games, but now sit back on the bench and watch Kirk Cousins. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like that would be not degrading, but it would feel like making him take a step back. So I'm firmly with you on that.
Mm-hmm. And while we're talking quarterbacks here, Jake, where are you comfortable drafting Kirk Cousins, just considering he's still recovering from this injury? We really haven't heard a whole lot about his recovery so far. We all know what Aaron Rodgers was able to do coming back from his Achilles injury in the same year. So, do you have concerns about Cousins coming back? And are you comfortable drafting him considering all these great fantasy options he has to throw to?
Yeah, right now I'm still comfortable drafting him. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. What do the docs say as we get further into the offseason, as we get close? But as of right now, I'm just going to make the assumption that he's close to full health. Let's say he's 85% of the way there by the time the season starts. I'll draft him still the same place I ever drafted Kirk Cousins. I'm not moving him up because of his situation in Atlanta. That's a dangerous thing to do there because he doesn't have rushing upside. But, he's still going to be QB 13 through QB 16.
I was going to say 12. I was going to say 12 to 13 probably come the end of the season.
Yeah. So that's fine. If I wait and punt the position with quarterback and I need a steady Eddie in there, I'm fine taking him.
And he's probably going as like quarterback 15 or 16 at this point. I can probably pull it up real quickly here and let us know. But yeah, I think he's not being drafted very high at all. Kirk Cousins, he's currently QB 18. So, I think
that'll go up as his health is assured.
Probably go up a few spots, but he's not going to jump, I don't think, a ton more than that. Because when you're looking at the guys right now that are right above him, you've got this is going up from the 18th. So you got Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, you got Herbert, Tua, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff, and then you're in the top 12. So I don't see him moving up a ton, just considering those guys that are ahead of him. So, if you really want to punt the position, you could go team old quarterback this year in redraft and take guys like Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers like really late. And
Stafford
it could be a really good, Stafford. And you could really have a stacked team by focusing on the other positions and just getting all that value and then taking those couple of quarterbacks late and then just streaming the matchups. I think that might be a real valuable redraft strategy this year.
We're gonna have to try that in a mock draft episode as we progress into the offseason, just to see how that works.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and then one more question here, talking Falcons, and it's our favorite tight end. We love to hate, or we love to be down on. I should say hate. That's a very strong word. We love to be down on, and that's Kyle Pitts. It's only because he's burned us for 3 years now, and hasn't done anything that we had hoped. Again, Arthur Smith is gone. We're expecting lots of good things. Is this the year that he can make a jump into that elite tight end group, Jake? Or is he just perpetually going to be a guy that is like tight end 5 to 8, depending on the year, not quite getting up into that elite tight end tier?
Well, I would say tight end 5 can still be considered elite as long as he has spike weeks to go with it. Like, because there's a lot of company at the top now as compared to some previous years where there's like 3 guys. It's Travis Kelce, it's Mark Andrews, Kittle, and then you're fucked. Like, that's not quite the case anymore.
Yeah. No, I know. You got Laporta,
McBride. You've got potentially, Dalton Kincaid, Brock Bowers, those guys.
Right. But it seems like every year we say like, oh, we got these guys, we got these young guys that are going to make an impact, and they just never really do.
But the thing with Kyle Pitts that's nice about it is we've seen him make an impact in his rookie year. True. So we saw for fantasy, it's not like he was elite, but he was setting rookie records. And the difference is that he had a comparable quarterback to just reasonable, just a competent guy throwing him passes, an old ass Matt Ryan, but old ass Matt Ryan got him to break a lot of records on that team. And it's because he could throw a catchable pass. I was just reading a stat the other day that Kyle Pitts over the last 3 seasons had the stone cold worst catchable pass rate amongst all tight ends. Like 40 of them were included in this. He was the stone cold worst.
Brutal.
It's not his fault that he's just getting all of these off-kilter throws. And he is one of those like athletic guys. I don't know. He runs downfield a lot. He's not like Jason Witten, where it's just like, you better hope he gets 150 catches to be able to produce for you. If he gets 90, he could still be tight end 1 to tight end 3 just because of how explosive he is. So I think Kirk Cousins can do that. He can throw a catchable deep pass. So yeah, Kyle Pitts could easily be. Can he be the tight end 1? Probably not. But do you think he could crack into the top 3 or 4?
It's definitely possible. I mean, I have a lot of hope for this offense, and Kyle Pitts being a big part of that. So yeah, is it possible? Yes. I've been burned. I tried Kyle Pitts 2 seasons in a row and I got burned, and I'm still feeling the sting. So I will believe it when I see it, and I'll take the loss. Like if he ends up there, I will fully admit that I was wrong and I should have probably had him higher in my rankings. But until I see it, I'll keep my expectations tempered.
Where do you think reasonably he finishes? Like, what is your ceiling or floor outcome for him this year?
I would say he probably finishes in the tight end 4 to 6 range.
Okay, that's very reasonable. I'd be drafting.
I don't think. I mean, yeah, I would probably be drafting him based on that, depending on where he's going in ADP. Like if tight ends fly off the board, I mean, I'm not going to be spending an early round pick in redraft on tight ends, but if he ends up falling to like, I don't know, the 6th or 7th round, I'd definitely be interested at that point.
All right.
I do think you're going to get some spike weeks from him.
Yeah, I wanted to figure out a way to beer bet this. I don't know that we can because that's so close. 4 to 6. Like, I'm not going to do the top 3 dance with tight end. I've been burned by tight ends just in general far too often in the past, so I will not be doing that. But Glad to know where we come from. Can we just talk real quick, Drake?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's in the chat. Jamie here is asking how many beers are we in. We both sound sober and making complete sense with our takes. We should get belligerent. And Jamie, all I'm going to say to that is, if you can join us at the expo, you'll see us plenty belligerent at that point. If you want to get some drunk hot takes about fantasy sports, come catch us there.
we might be drinking. We're not full on drunk here for this. As we get closer to the end of the episode, maybe. I did want to ask about Drake London super quick, though. He's been bad for fantasy relative to where you've been drafting him.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, top 12 possibility for him or no?
Yes. I am all in on Drake London this year. I think this is the year where he definitely breaks out and he fulfills this fantasy value that we've been waiting for the last couple of years. I truly believe this is the year. And I love that he's kind of being slept on a little bit in drafts because I will take the value as it's fallen to me all day long.
Yeah, I think like he's pushing guys to like Jalen Waddle out of the mixture, and he's like supplanting that him, Devontae Smith, that kind of group of guys. I think he is he's being drafted around, if not after them, and I will absolutely take him instead of those guys. What do you have as ADP? I'm curious.
Yeah, I am trying to find it right here. He is currently going wide receiver 13. So he is going ahead of guys like Nico Collins, DJ Moore, Debo, Ayuk, Diggs, Evans, Kupp. I mean, he's up there.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not getting a discount.
This is standard scoring. It reset on me.
God. First of all, standard scoring should not be the standard scoring. Or
in PPR, he's going as in PPR, he's currently going as the wide receiver 10. So, I mean, he is...
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Not maybe the screaming value I thought he was.
No. Well, shit. I might still draft him, though.
Strike that, reverse it. Yeah. I know I've gotten him in some best balls here as like my second wide receiver, kind of like at the end of like the second round. And I'm all over it at that point.
Nice.
But anyway, let's finish this episode off here. Let's move on to the Saints. Last team here in the NFC South. They lost over the offseason. Jameis Winston, Keith Kirkwood, Michael Thomas, and Jimmy Graham. I still don't believe Jimmy Graham's gone. I feel like his corpse is still just wandering around there. But anyway, notable additions: Cedric Wilson, Nathan Peterman, Equinemius St. Brown, and Stanley Morgan, the law firm himself. And in the draft, they took Spencer Rattler in the 5th round and wide receiver Bub Means, which is probably the best name of the draft this year. So, Jake, how are you feeling about this Saints offense? You got Chris Olave, not a ton behind him at this point. You've got an aging Alvin Kamara, the young upstart Kendre Miller, who we all love, but didn't do much last year. How are you feeling about this Saints team?
It's kind of icky. It's kind of icky for fantasy purposes. It's kind of a team that I'm not excited to draft this year, at least. In Dynasty, I have some thoughts and favorable thoughts. I don't look at this team as going like, oh, I got to get that guy. Or even if I'm on the clock and there's a group of 5 options and one of these guys is in the mix, I still probably at that point would be like, I'm going to poo-poo them. Alvin Kamara last year was great, but only because he got so many targets again. But you could just see the fall off happen with Alvin Kamara last year in terms of his actual like rushing ability. And then Chris Olave, he's a great talent, but does Derek Carr unlock that talent for fantasy? I don't know. Chris Olave feels like a DK Metcalf kind of guy of like, look at how amazing he is. But why the fuck isn't that getting me more fantasy points? It just seems like one of those kind of deals. And anybody behind them, like, I don't know what to do at tight end. Will I take Taysom Hill at the butt end of my draft if I have to, sure, because he could be mixed in there again as he always is. But Kendre Miller, again, I think that he will supplant Alvin Kamara, but will it be right away? I don't know. So is there anybody that stands out for this entire group that you're really trying to go after?
I'd be fine focusing on Olave at this point. I feel like he's like the guy that they're going to be throwing passes to, even though that means he'll probably be double covered a lot, but I think he's good enough that he can overcome that. So I could see him being like a Deontay Johnson light, although Deontay Johnson's going way later in drafts than him. So, I mean, Chris Olave is still going pretty early. So I probably won't have a lot of Olave on my team, just probably on guys around him and situation. I think he gets, because of his great rookie season, I think that name recognition, they're like, oh, it's Chris Olave. He's, target hog. And he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not disparaging Chris Olave. I just don't know that, Derek Carr can really support him in this offense. I mean, I think this offense as a whole is going to take a step back this year. They just, I just don't have a lot of faith. Let's put it that way. There's no real guys behind them to help take any double coverage away, which I know it's just contradicting myself. So don't, in the chat, don't point that out.
Don't point out the things that I say that might be wrong.
That's right. So yeah, just as a whole, I'm kind of just out on this offense as a whole. But let's really break into it here. So Jake, other than Olave, who is the next receiving option to roster on this team? Is it Kamara? Is it A.T. Perry? Is it Rashid Shaheed? Is it Juwan Johnson? Who is it?
I think it's Rashid Shaheed. I think that he is the next guy to look at because his ADP is still going to be massively depressed. I can't think of another number two who I believe to be the actual number two on the team who will be going in double-digit rounds like that and who has massive touchdown upside like that. It reminds me of when people were overdrafting Gabe Davis, except Rashid Shaheed isn't going to get up to that ADP. So, he's where you should have been drafting Gabe Davis all along, in my opinion, and I think he will stay roughly there and actually make himself a value in drafts. So, I'll go after him. I'm not kidding when I say I will take Taysom Hill towards the way back end of drafts for that reason, because who's going to fill in the gaps? It's him.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally his role. He is that, what's that shit that you put over, when you make a table out of pennies and you got epoxy. He's the epoxy of this team that's just filling those gaps, baby. Wherever we need somebody, let's just move you around. But yeah, it's just really hard to get excited about anybody. I don't know. You mentioned A.T. Perry. You mentioned Juwan Johnson's probably somebody we should talk about. Are you in on Juwan Johnson?
I am, and I was in on him last year. I want to say he was one of my drinking buddies last year, or at least he was someone, if not a drinking buddy, he was someone I was definitely high on, and it kind of shit the bed on me. Thanks Taysom Hill, and I know he had a little bit of injury last year too, but he is a guy that I think really could step into the role. I know we like to look for tight ends that can be the number two receiving option on a team. And in light of this offense, I think that could be the case. And the opportunity is definitely there. Will it happen? I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a ton of confidence in this offense, but if he is given the opportunity and Taysom Hill doesn't vulture all the valuable targets from him, I think he could be the number two guy, and he might be the secondary receiving option you want to own on this team.
Yeah. I can get on board.
And I know he's going late. He's going wide receiver, tight end, 22 right now. He is super late in best ball drafts. And I've picked him up on a few just because he's so late and the upside is there.
I always hate doing this, but like, yeah, he's a better best ball player than he is a redraft player. It's like, because you don't have to decide which game he's going to pop off on.
True.
But, you know, I would say the entire Saints team is a better roster for best ball than they are for redraft, frankly. Derek Carr included. I guess I can get myself to draft him in best ball if I had to. Yeah, Derek Carr, we're just not drafting though, right?
No, definitely not.
All
right. I know you already talked about Kendry Miller, and you said that he is going to be fantasy relevant, and he is going to supplant Kamara here this season.
Eventually.
So realistically, and I'm going to pin you down here and say, what week is it going to happen so we can make sure we roster him? But no, realistically, what kind of outcome do you see for him? About when in the season do you expect him to kind of take over this backfield, and then what kind of expectations should we have for that as the season progresses?
I don't think we're going to see a full-on takeover until very late in the season for him in terms of his backfield usage. You know, halfway through the season, which for our purposes for fantasy is basically useless. The question is, because they're lacking so poorly for pass catchers, does he get on the field at the same time as Alvin Kamara? So if we start to see that shit come out throughout the offseason, they're like, hey, we've got Kendry Miller out here running routes. What was the team that just did that with some obnoxiously bad the Cowboys just did that with Rico Dowdle. They came out and they're like, hey, we got Rico Dowdle running out the slot. That's going to fix everything. Obviously, it's not. If the Saints did that with Kendry Miller, however, that's one of the very few running backs I would actually pay attention to if they start talking about that kind of stuff. Because they do need pass catchers. He is a very, very good pass catcher. So maybe there's a world where he's useful. But strictly taking over the backfield, maybe halfway through the season.
Okay, fair enough. And then one last question here, just to kind of round out this episode. Derek Carr, we know he's not great. He's just kind of whatever. They drafted Spencer Rattler, again, very late in the draft. And typically those late round quarterbacks, NFL wise, you know, after round 1, even round 2, the hit rates of those quarterbacks are very, very slim. Do you see Spencer Rattler as the future? This is more of a dynasty related question. Do you see Spencer Rattler as the future for New Orleans, or was this just one of those things that he was there? We need a backup quarterback. Let's take him. I mean, Derek Carr, he's got a pretty hefty contract for the next couple years, but after the 2025 season is really when his dead cap hit drops off and gets really manageable. So I feel like that's the out for them. So what are your feelings about Spencer Rattler, more dynasty related than redraft?
Again, we're not talent evaluators here for rookies over at DTFF, but I feel like Rattler's the only guy that I can give myself a pat on the back for a pre-NFL draft take on, which is just everything that I read from much smarter people was like Spencer Rattler is meant to be like an amazing backup in the NFL, which I don't mean to sound as a slight, but like, because NFL teams need very competent backups, so there's not a huge drop off if their guy gets injured. And Spencer Rattler seems like that guy. Like every NFL team would want him, but I don't know that any want him as the starter. They want him as a sure thing backup so he can just keep things humming along. So I don't know. I mean, he's a day 3 pick. I don't really have that much excitement for Spencer Rattler. I'm not even picking him up in Dynasty unless he's, pick 412 in a rookie draft or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Time will tell, but I feel like this was one of those moves where they're just like, he fell to the 5th round. He's probably the highest rated player on our board. We need somebody to back up Derek Carr and maybe he'll flash that potential. Give him a couple years to sit on the bench and kind of groom him into an NFL starter. Possibly, likely, probably not. But yeah, give me in rookie drafts a late draft pick flyer on him, or he's a guy that maybe you could throw into a trade because you can never have too many quarterbacks on your roster in dynasties. So
That's right.
But yeah, otherwise, I mean, I don't have a ton of hope for him. So that'll do it though for the NFC South. Jake, do you have any parting thoughts here about the NFC South before we close out for the evening?
I want to do one real quick thing with you with these wide receivers from the NFC South. I want to see if we can rank these guys because this is a weird group. It's a weird group. So I would like to try this exercise for us. If we could try ranking the top 5 receivers out of this division. So I don't even know if there's a clear number 1. It sounds like we could have 2 number 1s. Let's see if we can do this maybe jointly. Number 1, I would say is between, just for 2024, by the way, not for Dynasty, but for 2024, between Mike Evans and Drake London. It sounds like maybe for the 2 of us. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would probably lean Mike Evans personally for this year. Mm-hmm. Although it's really dang close. I mean, I think it's really, really close. But give me Mike Evans. We've seen him do it before. I like he's that big-bodied guy for Baker that Baker can just kind of YOLO throw it up to, and Evans will come down for it, especially in the end zone. So I think he can, be a 12 to 15 touchdown guy this year if the cards fall right. So give me Mike Evans as number 1. What about you?
Agreed. I'm with you on Mike Evans a little bit just because, hey, what if Kirk Cousins isn't fully healthy and we get the Michael Penix experience and more for safety, I will go Mike Evans.
Right.
Then I would say very confidently number 2 is Drake London.
I agree.
Okay.
I am right there with you.
So we've got Mike, we've got Drake.
This is where it gets interesting. This is where I think we're going to have a little bit of difference here. So we've got Chris Olave, who we just talked about. You got Chris Godwin, Mike Evans' teammate, and you got Deontay Johnson with Carolina.
The Battle of the Chris's is an interesting one here. It's like Chris Hemsworth versus Chris Pine or Chris Pratt. There's too many Chris's in the mix for this to make me feel good about the rankings. But honestly, I don't think I'm going to go with either of them, which I think is really going to piss off some Chris Olave stands. I'm putting Deontay Johnson as my number 3 here.
Same.
Yes.
I am a Deontay Johnson stan. I don't care. I love him. Mm-hmm. I just think his opportunity in Carolina just to get peppered with targets, I don't know how you can pass that up, especially with the value you're going to be able to get him at. So we both got him at 3.
Yep. Now it's kind of the battle of the Chris's here.
4?
Now I think just because he's the number 1 target or presumed number 1 target on his offense, I think we would have to put Olave at number 4 above Chris.
God, we are in complete consensus here. I thought we'd have a little bit more disagreement than this. But at least we can say the show has these guys as a consensus as the top 5 wide receivers in the NFC South.
That's right.
Folks, this is just the NFC South, not any sort of season-long dynasty rankings by any means. So, yeah, I thought we might have a little differences there. I thought maybe I was going to be the one with the Deontay Johnson hot take.
But... we completely forgot about Darnell Mooney, Dustin. Where do we rank Darnell Mooney in all of this?
I thought you were going to say Rondale Moore.
You do know how I love Greg Dortch. I would never say Rondale Moore. I'm always Team Dortch over Rondale Moore, even though he's on a different team now. Yeah, we do have a nice clear number 5, though. A top 5. I like that for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that is nice. So, yeah, I think that will do it for this week's show, folks. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to everyone in the chat, especially Jamie there, keeping the chat nice and active. Love it. I was disappointed he only caught the second half of our show, but come back next week. We're actually probably going to be recording at 8 p.m., I believe, Central next week. We have a special guest that will be joining us, but can't go on until a little bit later. So we're going to accommodate that. So watch for the different time. We'll post something ahead of time, just reminding everybody. But follow my partner at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter. You can follow me at FF Dusty Dog. Follow the podcast at Drinking Fantasy. Give us your drunk trades or any trades. If you have any sort of fantasy related advice you want, hit us up. We're here for you all off season. We'll continue next week talking about the AFC South, which will be a lot of fun. And until then, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.